to the chamber at your next tourism breakfast, okay, we'll open this up, it's gonna go for 6 months, at the end of 6 months, we're gonna print this thing, it's $125 a shot, boom.
And your take on the historical sites? These are all the ones that are listed in the
Historical register.
Comp plan, and I just,
Here's the and just to be completely transparent, this is a problem we have with those. Many of them are private homes.
Most of them are, yeah.
So most of them, we put asterisks by the ones that were, that were visitable by the public. That isn't even a word, but anyway, that.
you might wanna do, public historic sites. Stay away from anything private, just put the public stuff. The private ones, they're able to get on.
If they want to pay,
Yeah.
then they can be on. And then that's a way of them letting you know that it's okay that the public drives by. Some people don't like people driving by their house.
And that's, as you can see, Caroline did it and included all of them, but they made a note that, but I don't even know if I like that approach, because you have people showing up at 12 o'clock at somebody's doorstep and
I
they don't
just-
like that.
Yeah.
So, doesn't matter.
Especially like, you got the Kusenberry house, is that the current residence?
No, it's a dog and marina.
We're gonna create a different map to show you.
But
Travis's
Or
home.
maybe that was the current residence.
are you clear, Linwood, on what we're saying?
No, we have a big
Yes,
circle
I am.
on that.
I'm
Okay,
clear
so,
with it.
so why don't you draft
Vision and
your
mission.
the vision and mission and your approach to how you would do this, so we can see that before we go off and
We spend all-
figure out how we're gonna go. do
Spend all
that.
this money that you've got.
Based on your feedback, I'll
Yeah.
craft that. vision.
Okay, because I want to make sure that we're all in alignment with what you're gonna go do. So we don't send you out and then somebody say, well, why are you doing that?
Sure. Thank you.
And think about the public aspect only. Talk about the public areas, those things that are state or.
Is this a limp? Never mind. Talk to you later.
All right? So, I mean, it's a work in process. We got more to do, but I think this was healthy and good discussion.
Thank you all.
It's a big tripod.
I just had them not too hard.
It's a 6-fold.
6-fold. Too hard.
All right, so, a discussion relative to the county ordinances, drilling for gas and oil. And this is, the intent here is to determine what, we have the planning commission work on. And you'll notice, I'm not using the F word.
Right.
Yeah. Not yet. And that's intentional, because when we talk about the planning commission and the land use aspects, we're really talking about drilling and the activity on a drill site. Doesn't matter what it's for. And we don't want them getting involved with the environmental aspect of it, which is gonna be handled by the state for the permits and the rest of that. Let's focus on our land use and how do we address the industrialized aspect of well drilling in our rural areas. What do we do? The benefit we have today right now is this is all done by special exception. I don't think anybody wants to change that.
Right.
Because we have ultimate final control on that. But we ought to talk about the things that need to be addressed in a special exception permit for a well drilling operation. So that's where we're at, and Eric, turn over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Late last year, that's when the discussion sort of arose about what we're going to do in looking at the county's comprehensive plan and draft and ordinance. I've distributed a copy of the exploratory drilling for oil and natural gas or natural gas ordinance. In addition to this ordinance, as Mr. Garzika mentioned, oil and natural gas drilling is permitted by special exception permit in the A1 and A2 districts. Okay, so it's listed specifically in those permitted uses by special exception permit. So there's another piece to this. I just wanted you to be aware. I didn't provide that, but it's there. So in January of 2013, the board directed me to make a recommendation about what to do, and I basically recommended that the board direct the Planning Commission to undertake a review of the county's ordinance and the comprehensive plan and make a recommendation and take the time to review it and look at the issues. I have also distributed a draft resolution which the board directed me to provide at a meeting, I believe it was last month, for your consideration, which would direct the Planning Commission to undertake this review. It's a bit lengthy, but I suggest that it's only as long as it needs to be to set the foundation as to why you're undertaking the review, and the authority to do what you're doing and what you may ultimately propose to do in terms of regulating this activity in the county. So it's wordy. I'm just distributing it now. You have an opportunity to review it going forward. This is just a draft. Changes can be made, of course, naturally, but it's for your consideration. Basically, it sets the basis for your authority, or what I view your authority to be under state law, and provides a roadmap going forward that directs the Planning Commission specifically to do what you want them to do. It's not going to provide for some wide open, wide-ranging inquiry regarding hydraulic fracturing or anything like that. A lot of those issues you have to be careful about, because if you get into those things, then you're getting into the bailiwick or the territory of DMME. And when you do that, you run the risk of going outside your statutory authority. So I want the review to be directed to the zoning ordinance and the county's own comprehensive plan, I would suggest.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think that's the given all of the discussion and interest, we need to guide the Planning Commission so they don't, because we want to get it done, and we really want to have something in place that that addresses land use should anybody ever want to drill, whether it be for oil, gas, or whatever. I think it's a good thing that we're here. It's an opportunity that ordinance hasn't been updated in a number of years. It's a good, healthy time to go take a look. We know a lot more about what happens in those sites, and so we can take a look and see what we can do.
Right. The zoning ordinance as it currently exists is very bare bones. They have to comply with the site plan rules and regs, and then they have to show proof of ownership, and they have to provide an EIA and the operation plan, which they submit to DMME, and that's basically it. And then they have to get the special exception permit, and then via the special exception permit process, the board can impose additional requirements upon them. But it may be prudent, and this will be part of the study, that the Planning Commission and then of course the board would review their report, or the Planning Commission undertakes to determine what additional requirements you may want to put into the zoning ordinance, so it's a little bit more explicit. As I've mentioned before, Washington County undertook a similar process with their Planning Commission, and that was a positive process in my view.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, a
Yes,
couple
ma'am.
of questions.
Sure.
Recognizing our focus is the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance, but we made an exemption in the noise ordinance for industrial type activity. Do we want to incorporate them also reviewing the noise ordinance as they're looking at this, or no?
I think it's something that, I think if you get through this piece, then the next step would be then looking at the other ordinances based
That
on what
relate.
we've done.
Okay.
So I think do it stepwise, otherwise you lose focus. So let's focus on, okay, the site, And then what emanates from the site can come next.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
That's what I would agree with that you want to do this first, and then as part of their report and their review, they could indicate, well, this intersects with the noise ordinance, so we suggest we take a look at that, or you make this amendment to that.
Okay.
So, one
And
thing at a
then
time.
the second thing is, I was wondering, are we going to offer any types of areas for them to take into consideration so that nothing is overlooked? Such as setbacks from residential, commercial schools, pipelines, number of well pads per site, pipelines themselves, disposal of the fracking waste at the landfill, whether or not we're going to allow that.
Well, that
land
gets
app-
out, consider that as the emanation piece.
That's the emanation, okay, all right. Lighting at the site, flaring, things like that. The truck traffic, would that fall under that, or no?
The traffic comes into play with the site.
Okay, so
I mean,
truck
it would be
traffic,
not
Yeah,
specific,
yeah.
it's not specific to the special exception itself.
Okay.
It would be a,
because are you gonna allow it during school bus hours? Are you gonna only allow it on certain roads?
well, remember, and that's the beauty of the special exception, because you put in the conditions at the time of the special exception. So where it would be important to know which roads you would restrict, all of that, and you would do that
Okay.
site by
For
site.
those, but you could go ahead and have in your ordinance that you won't allow trucks during school bus hours, if you wanted. I mean, as a suggestion, it could be something already crafted in there, so you don't have to worry about conflicts.
You could theoretically. For this stage in the process, I would suggest that you keep it a little open and not be too specific. The planning commission, I mean, they're your planning experts. And
I
they're
understand,
gonna-
but
and so, though, all those issues are gonna come up, I would presume, in their review. They're gonna hear from staff, and they're gonna hear about the options for regulating the activity, and that's gonna include the setbacks, that's gonna include flaring, that's gonna include the road impacts, that's gonna include all those issues. But giving them a laundry list of issues to look at might be a little confining, I would suggest.
I'm not trying to confine them, I'm just trying to help so that they don't overlook something. I'm just trying to,
And so,
like, to provide a starting point.
I was listening, and it's scary that I agree with you again, but I think you run the risk of them saying, we got a checklist of things we gotta do, rather than saying, we want you to look at it broadly. Remember, it comes back to us for final approval.
Okay, so as
So-
long as I have my list, I can make sure they've checked it off, got it?
And I think we don't wanna precondition them.
No,
So let them go,
okay,
where we're interested in this whole area, take a look at it, you're our planning guys, do the job, come back, and, they also should, and we can relay this to them, that identify any other potential areas that they think need to be looked at after they finish this as part of their report.
And you can always, that's good, and you can always suggest or require them to submit interim reports. So they might say, well, these are the areas we're looking at, Board of Supervisors, are we on the right path?
I
And
think that
then-
would be
And then you
prudent.
you could provide direction, and there'll be some back and forth.
It's similar to what we went through with the porn shop issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
Right back
was a really tough thing to have to deal with. But, the General Assembly doesn't give us the flexibility to say, we will not allow this type of business in King George County or in our locality. But the code does allow you to do things like setbacks, like proximity to schools, those kind of things. So I think really what we want to make sure is that we provide the message to the planning commissioner, what are we really trying to accomplish? What we're really trying to accomplish, I think, is ultimately we want to maintain control through the special exception process. We want to take, to the maximum extent possible, we want to institutionalize that control in our ordinance. And I think we want to take maximum benefit from what the code allows us to do, I think. We also don't want to run afoul of the Code of Virginia, because then we're all of a sudden null and void, and we've seen that on some things, not necessarily locally, but around the state as well. So I think that's really where they got to come in, is diving in, understanding what the code allows, take advantage of all of that to the maximum extent possible, with the understanding is that we don't want to industrialize our rural landscape. That's what we're trying to do. It's not up to us to control the drilling methods and those kind of things. As Joe pointed in his introductory comments, that's a DMM thing. We don't get to monitor what a well looks like, but we still got the special exception power, and let's, you know, that porn shop or whatever the right term is that we had to deal with, adult bookstores or whatever they were called. You know, Stafford had a bunch of challenges with it, and when it came to us, we said we don't want them anywhere. Well, turns out you got to provide a place where it's allowed. I think it's up
Industrial.
bottom of the gravel pit in Dog is if you draw the map is where it works out. But so there's some opportunity to. I mean, it was according to the Code of Virginia, and it's what we got to do here too.
One that we ran afoul was the first noise ordinance.
That's right. Yeah.
Which was struck down by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
ours
in
was,
Virginia Beach.
Right.
ours was fine until the Supreme Court
Until the
ruled.
Supreme Court ruled.
Correct.
And
As it
start over
happens,
again.
right.
So we, make sure we get.
Something went on in Virginia
run
Beach. yeah.
afoul of that.
So with the September 19th event in Tappahannock, the fracking forum that's being held where they're bringing in the elected officials from the different counties in Pennsylvania to talk about fracking and lessons learned. I know Travis forwarded that to all of us. I was wondering, I thought it would be prudent to invite our planning commission members to also attend that so that they could hear lessons learned from those localities. It's actually 3 different counties. They have fracking currently taking place. They're in support of it, but it gives lessons learned, you know, things that they wish they had done differently.
It's a public event, right? Is that a public event?
Correct, but I don't believe the information has been forwarded to them, and I guess I'm.
Right, but I'm saying we wouldn't be inviting them. We wouldn't be overstepping our bounds by inviting them, right? They'd just be made available to them,
Correct.
like it would.
Right, if
Right, so
Travis
it's
sends
a
them.
public event.
Right, so is that fine with everyone if Travis sends the information to Jack?
Yeah, I just want to make sure they understand we're not interested in them going down a fracking route in this study. This study is about well drilling.
I understand, but it gives lessons learned. That's what, I'm just looking for that
And it's
takeaway,
Pennsylvania.
which is different, correct, different laws, I understand that.
So I just,
But it
Fine,
never
let 'em-
hurts
let
to
'em know
gather
about it.
information.
they don't have to go, but I just
Yeah.
want to make sure when, maybe we should send Eric to the planning commission
With a whole description of what we've been talking about tonight.
with the resolution in the background. I think that,
I expect that
yes.
I'll be working with you all and with Jack
Yep.
and the planning commission throughout this process to review drafts, to review examples from other localities, whether they be in Virginia or Pennsylvania, whether they, drafts of comprehensive plans. I mean, all those things I think are going to be explored, and I hope to be involved in that process.
Yeah, the relevancy of these things varies depending on whether or not you're a supporter or an opponent, I guess, of the process or the, you know, if you're thinking that fracking is something that we wanted to do here in King George and you were trying to find the best way to do it, then a lot of those things, then you'd probably want to really encourage them to do. When you're hearing from the board that, hey, we, you know, we're not we want the maximum control possible. We're not supportive of going down that route. Then the education on the process itself is, I mean, it could be good information, but we're directing that we don't want to do it. If you were trying to do it, then you want to understand how to do it the best way possible, I guess. But
I don't know, I believe in gathering as much information as I can, but, on that, I had
Well, your
forwarded-
role is different than the planning commission.
Correct.
Right.
Now, I had forwarded to you a while back, Eric, that link to the Cornell University white papers regarding fracking. I don't know if you ever reviewed it. It listed things like cost and benefits, lessons for policymakers, economic consequences, impacts on tourism, a guide to protecting local roads, assessing your water resource impacts and things like that. If you haven't reviewed it and you need me to resend it, I was just wondering your thoughts on whether you thought it would be good information for the planning commission to have.
I believe I have reviewed that. I've reviewed so much.
I know, and it's been a while.
With regard to oil and gas drilling and hydraulic fracturing at this point that I believe I have. If you want to resend it, I would appreciate it. And I think information like that, sure, would be helpful for the planning commission. Those are the kinds of things they're gonna be, looking at. I think when it comes down to actually doing what they're tasked with doing, some of that information may be helpful, may not, but certainly, let's take a look at it, sure.
So it's not, I mean, again, we're not asking them to form an opinion on a drilling technique. We're telling them we want
No.
the limit, we want to be able to control what happens in our county. We want our ordinance to give us the maximum protection possible.
We want to minimize the
So, I
impact
mean,
of
whether
any
it's
well drilled.
drilling with a pickaxe or a hydrochloric acid is irrelevant to them.
But
I mean,
these
the
things
goal is
all
to
just
protect-
offer-
Yeah.
These things all just offer things for you to consider addressing.
Right.
That may or may not be in their jurisdiction.
Correct.
Right.
Sure.
Because they go way beyond the land use aspect. They get into the permit aspect. So I think that's, you just, when we take this, we'll bring it back at our next meeting for any comments. Please provide them, if you have them, to me, and I'll share them with everybody. And we can get something that we can go to the planning commission with. Oh, and what's the time frame that we give them? Because I don't want this
Right.
open-ended.
You're right. Yeah, I don't think you do. You might say you want a preliminary report or an update after 2 or 3 or 4 months or something like that, something for you to
You
consider.
gotta
And then
remember,
you-
they only meet once a month.
Right, exactly. So you need to give them a good amount of time, because it's gonna take a time to get the process started and gather information, like from Ms. Brabo and others, and for Jack to do his due diligence research. And then you may wanna have stages, like you wanna follow-up report from them every 6 months or something like that. But you don't want it to be like 5 years from now, you're still waiting on the report either,
think-
so.
Well, it's really staff work anyhow. I mean, the planning commissioners aren't gonna do this work. I mean, it's gonna be staff work presented to them for their review. They're gonna comment on it, give it back to staff. Staff will do, I mean, it's.
Sure, they'll ask questions and deliberate, and then they'll send
So,
it
I
back
mean,
to staff.
It all depends on how much staff time that we have. I mean, you're, I don't know what.
Yeah, I'm
I don't know what
looking.
it is, but.
Yeah, I mean, based on having been on the planning commission, I'm saying 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's gonna be a while. because-
6 to 9 months is probably the window that we're.
He was saying 4 months, they'll give a report. They'll give an update
Yeah,
in 4
but
months.
I would
Yeah,
push them
and
to
then-
complete.
Put an end date on
Then the final report in 9 months.
Yeah.
That
6 to
might be
9
it.
months, but
Yeah.
like I said, it's a lot of.
This
staff.
is, I think I had provided this to you previously, but this is, a sample that Essex County was working with
Right.
on their comprehensive plan wording. Okay,
So, yeah, we have,
I'd love to see that.
okay.
well, good. I think this is, again, good movement on where we want to go. So, yeah, take a look at this. Any comments, send them back to me. I'll get with Eric. We'll come up with another draft for consideration.
Thank you very much. If you have any questions about the draft you've received tonight, please call. Happy to discuss it with you, and we can also discuss whatever revisions you may have in mind and follow up later. Thank you.
It was really like you spell draft, it's a DAT on one page, RF on the other.
That's a problem that I've been struggling with. That's a watermark in our on Microsoft Word. And when you see it on the screen, it says draft, but then when you print it out, for some reason, it doesn't come out that way.
Microsoft Word, I said, what is that? And then I
What
saw
is that?
RF on the other page, I said, oh, it all goes together.
That's right, yeah, and I've got to get with our IT guys on how to fix that, because it's
That's
frustrating.
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Ready to adjourn, Mr. Chairman?
Any other business? Travis, we got anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you all. I think